Hello, everyone. Like Linda said, I'm Locke Symposium, and my presentation tonight is on addiction, the hijacking of your brain. Addiction is a complex condition. It's characterized by compulsive behavior and a strong desire to partake in a particular behavior or ingest a substance, usually despite the negative consequences that it may cause. Addiction is very dangerous and can have detrimental effects on one's life. It can stem from anything, from food to cocaine, and even the cell phone in your pocket can have the same addictive potential as the illegal controlled drugs. Addiction stems from the reward system area of your brain. The reward system is one of the most primary sections of the brain, and it developed early in humans to enforce good behaviors. When early humans would perform what the brain saw as a good behavior, like eating or gathering food or mating, the reward system would send dopamine through your brain. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. And when there's dopamine in your brain, it causes you to feel happy and good and accomplished. Because of this, a behavior that would cause the reward system to release dopamine would make you feel good. And then the early humans would be more likely to repeat that behavior. The reward system is still very relevant in our modern brains. And the hijacking of it is what drugs do to cause addiction. When someone takes a drug, the drug latches on to the dopamine production of the brain and causes the brain to release far more dopamine than would be released from completing a simple task that makes you feel good. Over time, this floods your dopamine pathways with unhealthy, elevated levels of dopamine. This causes the dopamine receptors in your brain to become less sensitive to dopamine over time. What this causes is receptors that are numb to natural stimulants, like you performing a natural good behavior. And what it becomes is your brain only feeling happy from unnatural, elevated levels of dopamine in your brain caused by drugs. Once you only know how to feel happy from drugs, it causes you to return to drugs over and over again, causing addiction. Now, addiction is not just a result of drugs. Addiction can stem from anything, and something you frequently hear people get addicted to is their phone. Oh. Anyway, man, they can't take my phone like that. It's like a part of me is missing. I don't know what to do without it. I'm anxious and I don't know what to do with myself. That was a quote from a high schooler in Philadelphia. And it shows just how powerful a phone addiction can be. Look at Carl. Right now, he has an addiction to his phone, and because of that, he's missing out on an opportunity to connect with the community and engage and challenge himself.
This is better than a drug addiction.
Is it? We think of a phone addiction as so different from a drug addiction because one's socially acceptable and the other isn't. If drugs were socially acceptable, would we think of them as so much worse than phones? That's one of the scariest parts about a phone addiction. It's so socially acceptable that no one will confront you about it. And it's harder to see because it's all around you. Text notifications, social media updates cause your brain to release small hits of dopamine whenever you check your phone. This dopamine then reinforces the behavior of you checking your phone over and over again. And once you're on your phone, variable reinforcement that's been engineered into your phone keeps you engaged, similar to how a slot machine works. Endless scrolling and personalized content grant continuous instant gratification from you being on your phone. That's what phones are really engineered to do. recreate the dopamine hit you would get from performing like a difficult task and feeling truly accomplished and happy, but they produce it instantly, and it's easy. It's easy to be on your phone. However, what can happen over time is if you're so used to getting these easy, quick dopamine hits from your phone, if you try to stop using your phone, all of a sudden it's a lot harder to feel happy because you don't have these instant dopamine hits. You have to put a lot of work into something to get pleasure out of it. If you've been addicted to your phone for a while, this effort you have to put into getting the dopamine hits can feel like too much effort. And you can resort back to just going on your phone. That's what an addiction to a phone would look like. Phones and drugs have differences and similarities. However, one of their similarities is a danger they cause: depression. Both phones and drugs, if used a lot, can cause depression. Differently, however, drugs tend to cause depression because your brain, if you take drugs, is so used to elevated dopamine levels that you don't know how to feel happy without drugs. Phones, it's different. Phones tend to cause depression when they make you compare yourself to others. If you're on your phone and you're scrolling through social media, you're going to see a lot of people and a lot of lifestyles, and it's only natural to compare yourself. However, the lifestyles and people you see on your phone, it's the best of the best. It's the most successful people. It's the best lifestyles, and it's only a snapshot of them. It's only the part they want you to see. Because of this, it can make you feel really inferior and cause anxiety. Additionally, both phones and drugs discourage physical activity and disrupt sleep patterns, both things that can cause depression.
The drugs also make you dangerous to others. No matter how much I'm on my phone, it never makes me dangerous to be around.
What about the 400 people that die every single year from texting and driving in the US? Those people couldn't wait to check their phone. They had a phone addiction, and they couldn't wait to check their phone. And because of that, people died.
A phone addiction is still better than a drug addiction, though, because it's easier to stop using your phone. If you stop using drugs and you're addicted, you'll get withdrawals.
Withdrawal is actually a universal thing. Withdrawal is not just limited to drugs. Withdrawal is the result of a dependency. If you have a dependency on anything and stop doing that thing, that's when withdrawal is called. With drugs, withdrawal usually shows itself as tremors or anxiety and restlessness. However, in phones, withdrawal can show itself as you not knowing how to react in a social environment. If you've used your phone over and over again to avoid uncomfortable social interactions, then if you stop trying to use your phone, you might feel anxious. All of a sudden, you're having to re-engage in this uncomfortable stuff. And that discomfort can drive you right back to your phone, similar to how withdrawal and anxiety and tremors can cause you right back to drugs if you are a drug addict. So, when should you give a kid a phone? If phones are so dangerous, should you ever give a child a phone? Yes, phones are not inherently dangerous. Anything can be addictive, but nothing has to be addictive. The rat park experiment demonstrates this really well. Done in the late 90s by a psychologist, Bruce K. Alexander, and his colleagues. Alexander and his colleagues looked at previous studies that had been done surrounding addiction. In these previous studies, researchers had taken a rat, a singular rat, placed it in a cage, isolated with really nothing else in that cage to do. In that cage were then placed 2 water bottles. One water bottle filled with plain water, and another water bottle filled with water laced with morphine or heroin. They then observed the rat. Pretty consistently, the rat preferred the water laced with drugs. And over time, that rat would get addicted, usually overdosing and eventually dying. These results strengthened the beliefs at the time that something about the drugs themselves had this innate, irresistible ability to cause addiction. However, Alexander and his colleagues challenged these results. They wondered if the results had something to do with the environment. To test this, they created a rat park. Their rat park was a much larger cage, with a bunch of different rats who could socialize and connect with each other. Inside these cages were objects that they could explore and toys they could play with. Yet again, they placed 2 water bottles in the cage, one with plain water, one with water laced with morphine. However, this time the rats acted differently. Many of the rats had no interest in the drug-laced water. And throughout the experiment, there were no deaths caused by overdose to the rats. The researchers said that the rats seemed too busy engaging with life, connecting and socializing to get addicted to the drug. This showed that morphine can be addictive, and it was very addictive for the first rat. But for the second rats, in an enriching environment, the morphine wasn't addictive. It's the same with your phone. Your phone can be addictive, but it doesn't have to be addictive. So when should a child get their phone? It's less about age and more about environment. If a child is in an environment with a lot of connection, they're engaged in life, they have a lot of hobbies, and they're making new friends, then a phone most likely won't do any harm. They'll be the rats in the rat park who are too busy engaging with life to get addicted. However, if a child who's struggling to find connection, is isolated, and doesn't have a lot of hobbies, if they're given a phone, it can act like the morphine in the first cage and become an addiction. Rat park is applicable to humans far past childhood. Now, none of you have 2 water bottles in your bedroom, one with plain water, one with water laced with morphine. At least I hope. However, you do have a phone in your pocket, which can be very addictive, and you have the ability to go out and buy alcohol or drugs. The opportunity to get addicted to anything is always around you. The key to staying in power and away from addiction is really to create your own rat park. If you can create an environment around you where you're engaged, you have healthy friendships that you're engaged with, hobbies that you enjoy, then addiction will rarely be a problem for you, if ever. If despite your circumstances you can build your own rat park, you're far less likely to ever get addicted. And if you can pass these lessons down to your children, a phone addiction might never be something they have to deal with. Thank you.